I'm going to answer you, but I'm also going to say when Tom was talking about having a dinner and doing a podcast and doing accruals and doing an MSA, my mind made like an AI photo of all those things happening at
Oh.
the same time where he's at a dinner, he's got a mic in his hand, one hand's doing accruals, one's doing the MSA, just doing it all over there. So
Is an
this is
octopus your spirit
Right.
animal,
Yes,
Tom?
yes, yes. I have 8 tentacles, and they're just trying to figure out where to go.
who's your
The Abstract is brought to you by SpotDraft, an end-to-end contract lifecycle management system that helps high-performing legal teams become 10 times more efficient. If you spend hours every week drafting and reviewing contracts, worrying about being blindsided by renewals, or if you just want to streamline your contracting processes, SpotDraft is the right solution for you. From creating and managing templates and workflows, to tracking approvals, e-signing, and reporting via an AI-powered repository, SpotDraft helps you in every stage of your contracting. And because it should work where you work, it integrates with all the tools your business already uses. SpotDraft is the key that unlocks the potential of your legal team. Make your contracting easier today at spotdraft.com. What do you need to know if you want to transition into a legal ops role? How about finding success once you're in the role? And where can legal ops lead your career long term? Today, we are joined on the Abstract by two of my friends and leaders in the legal ops space, Tommie Tavares-Ferreira, head of legal ops at Cedar, and Tom Stephenson, the VP of Community and Legal Ops at Legal.io. Tommie previously led legal ops for Peloton, and Tom led legal ops for Credit Karma. They also have a podcast together called Dear Legal Ops. If you haven't listened to it, you've got to check it out, which I happened to be a guest on last year, and now they kindly agreed to join the Abstract. Tom and Tommie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Tyler. It is such a pleasure to be on the other side of the microphone.
We've got a few themes that we want to talk through today. I want to start by asking you about the transition from being a paralegal to legal ops. And legal ops is a little bit of an emerging field. Tom, I want to ask you first. This is a path that a bunch of other folks have taken. You started as a paralegal. Now you run legal ops. What was that transition like? How did you make it happen?
It was a long, long walk during some cold days in Chicago, honestly. When I think and I look back at my journey over time, I actually started off as a legal receptionist in Chicago. I physically walked in after answering a Craigslist ad, and I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I should figure this out at some point. And, during the Great Recession, back in the early 2000s, I really was actually just grateful to have a job, at that point. And there weren't as many opportunities for legal professionals as a whole back then compared to what we kind of see today. So the fact that I was able to get in, of the front door of a law firm and have an opportunity to experience different ways that the law firm worked, right? So from being a receptionist to working my way up to paralegal, and then from there, tirelessly reaching for more, and not because I was hungry or not because I was bored. I just knew that I was driven by ambition, and it felt as though there was a little bit more for me to strive. And this is something that Tommie and I have talked a lot about on the podcast, right? Is that storytelling and understanding how do you feel and feed your purpose and that drive, but balance being able to do it in a way that is speaking your love language. And ultimately, I just continued to put my head down, have great mentors, and really figure out how I can transform the information from different segments to its core function of running legal like a business. And for me, that focused on the people, the payments, the technologies that really just improved the business outcomes and delivery of legal services. And then from there, it was just the roller coaster ride from law firm to in-house, in-house to leadership, leadership to chief of staff. And I think we're seeing a lot of these similar paths in the industry. They may not be as linear or in the same trajectory, but I'm hoping that my story and Tommie's story as well, right, can be this beacon of hope for people to be active and loud about the paths that they took to get in the seats they are today, and then understanding kind of what those core denominators are, as we continue to illuminate and shine a light on the path from paralegal to legal operations.
Tommie, I want to ask you about your path too. Another title that comes up sort of in concert with paralegal often is like contracts manager or head of contracts or director of contracts. That was a step on the path to you as you built your career towards head of legal ops. Tell us a little bit about how you did it and maybe how running contracts looks similar or different to being a paralegal.
That's a great point, which is not everyone has the same path to get to legal operations. Some people are out there active attorneys realizing they want to do something more strategic. Some people are
Hmm.
out there like Tom was being a paralegal. I was a paralegal for a very short amount of time, but I spent a long time in my career being a contract manager.
Hmm.
And how that emerged was working on contracts day in, day out, doing negotiations, working on amendments, trying to make this path of contracting easier. And inside of that, I was like, this is the volume of contracts that we review. And at the time, I was actually negotiating contracts. So the volume of NDAs, like it was actually too much to keep up with. And so my legal operations expertise was born out of survival, right? It was like, how do we do
Hmm.
this better? Like, how do we figure out how to systematize the way that the contracts get to us? How do we figure out what we can put back on the business to actually negotiate themselves? Like, what can we teach the business? How can we systematize doing contracts management? And not only was that the people part of what we always talk about in legal ops, it was also the technology part of it, right? And so inside of negotiating and wanting to sort of survive and thrive in my role, I really began to see ways that I could leverage technology, ways that I could build out the processes, empower the business, give them information, start to carve out like managing expectations
Yeah.
for what they could do, managing exceptions, like what has to come to us, setting up some really solid rules. And all of that inside of it, my GC said to me, you know, as you're building out these contracts and you're building out, a technology platform or you're building out better ways for the business to get to market faster, you're doing legal operations. And I am not kidding you. It was like a decade ago. I did not know what legal operations was. It did not. And I was like, sure. And then he promoted me into a legal operations role from being a contract manager because all of the elements of what I was doing really were
Mhm.
operational. They were to fit to the business, they were to empower the business and make them get to market faster. It was all operational excellence that I was doing, and I had no idea. And he truly opened my world up in a way that I didn't even know existed at the time.
That's incredible. And I want to ask you later about the sort of mentorship aspect of this or the relationship that oftentimes you can develop with your GC or maybe even someone else within the business who's on the leadership side who can help you in this journey. Uh, but Tom, I want to ask you first: do you feel like the shift from paralegal to legal ops not only requires some new skills, but actually requires a mindset shift of sorts? Is that something that you went through?
I've waffled back and forth on, is it new skill sets? Is it
Yeah.
shifting your mindset? Is it a combination somewhere of both? I think where I land today, always evolving. So this is, I think, one of the great parts about both, us being podcasts, right? You hosting, us hosting, talking with different guests. You kind of, hopefully, at the end of the day, learn something new. And I think
Yeah.
over the years, I really have drawn into other people's stories, and it's similar to mine. And so I think it's understanding what your value is. I say this often, love language, and I'm not specifically talking about these personal skill sets, right? I'm talking about the love language in your career. For me, My father was an accountant. I am a math and science brained person. I kind of tell Tommie this all the time, right? She's much more creative than I am. I am just dotting I's, crossing T's, analytics. Some would call me, some would call me a little stiff at times, right? When it comes to sharing information. But I realized when I had this background as a finance paralegal, right? When I had these skill sets that tapped into the broader math, analytics, data, connecting A to B to C using points, that's when I turned my perspective into the workplace and thought, okay, instead of it being a liability because I'm not an attorney, because I didn't go to law school, how can I ultimately share my love language, my backstory, and breathe life into that by understanding what were my interests and creating value for my overall, firm partners, legal administrators, and then ultimately supporting the GC. And that's where I think it doesn't necessarily require a new skill set if it's something that you are bringing to the table that is running legal like a business. Payments, people,
Mhm.
process, technology, understanding one of those four core buckets. If you can continue to draw from past experiences, you'll find the way to connect the dots.
Mhm.
However, that being said, there are new skill sets that you do have to acquire over time. And I will just say one of them is the relationship part, right? In law firm life, I wouldn't say you're necessarily bred and cultivated in a way that understands, as Tommie was saying earlier, the importance of mentorship, right? The importance of these relationship building. And over the years, I'd probably say relationship building is this 50-30-20 rule, right? Where, 20% of your time is really spent with people that you should aspire to be, right? Leaders in your industry. Then that 30% is spent within time that are people within your proximity, right? And these where it becomes, your industry specific colleagues, or when you're going to networking events or, seminars, or you're trying to do professional advancement, right? It might not be somebody who is specifically in-house legal operations fintech, right? But maybe a chief of staff who's been doing it for 20 years, who also has great public speaking skills.
Mhm.
And then once you do that 30-20 at the beginning for your relationship building over years and over time, and kind of where I am right now in my career, you take that and then I hope you mature it, flip it over, and then 50% of your time really is spent paying that forward. And I think that's ultimately where you find, the relationship circle of life and how you support your own business partners and those that you may not work with or may have to lean into more as you're developing further relationships as you advance your career.
That's really interesting. Another way to ask the skills cut question, I guess, um, is this something that everyone who is a contracts manager or a paralegal should aspire to, right? Like, in other words, is the legal ops title or the legal ops role really important, or are there folks out there who are doing this who might be sort of perfectly happy with where they are, and that's okay too? Tommie, I'm curious for your perspective on that.
I think it's both. I think there's certainly people out there, and I've had paralegals, I work with paralegals, I've talked with paralegals who are matter experts in a certain part of the law. And it's
Hmm.
very hard for them to think about shedding a matter expertise, maybe one that they've worked on for a few years, maybe one that they've worked on for their whole career, shedding it to go to a role that may feel more opaque and generalist to them. Like, oh, I'm going to shed being a litigation paralegal where I know
Right.
exactly what I do, where I can speak to it. I have 10, 20 years of career activity going into interviews. I can ace them. And now you want me to sort of shed that to go, well, just because a litigation paralegal is an incredibly awesome project manager, like you're a project manager, right? You're managing dates, you're managing deliverables, you're prompting attorneys to produce things by certain days. You are the most supreme project manager, and that is nothing if not appropriate for translating out to legal ops. That's a really scary prospect for someone to sort of dip their toe in the unknown, right? So first, I think it's a deep, deep, deep introspection into who are you and what do you want out of your career. Now,
Hmm.
one thing that I have said to folks when they were on my team is, hey, go out there and I'll nod to legal IO, go out there and do a salary assessment because
Hmm.
this is this is a real thing. If you want to think about your ambition in your life and your career, there are real caps on where you're going to get there's obviously caps everywhere, but if you start to compare what are the caps with the paralegal contract manager roles
Right.
versus what am I seeing with the caps in a legal ops role, that might be one motivator for folks to go, I'm going to dip my toe in the pool, because there is a much wider, bigger opportunity there. And then, of course, ambition. So I would say to really think about who you are, what your ambition is, whether you're okay with shedding some of the I'm the matter expertise in this practice area of the law versus I'm going into a bigger, more generalist role, like Tom said, running legal like it's a business, and taking some of these skills and really transferring them over to this bigger role, which I think has a lot more career opportunity now. And we can even go a
Hmm.
few steps deeper, a little bit later in the podcast on where it's actually going beyond legal ops. But
Yes.
it's a question of what is your ambition. It's doing that introspection and really being honest with yourself. If you're not comfortable with it, that's okay. There's other places that you can go inside of the roles where you have that ambition. But if you want bigger, go bigger.
Yeah. If you think about going bigger and finding success, I think a lot of from the conversations that I've had with smart folks like you, seems to really be around building trust with a variety of stakeholders and understanding the broader business. Walk us through how one actually does that, Tom. Is it as simple as, you set up meetings with all the product managers and the rev ops folks, and like how does one actually sort of tactically go about building that trust and understanding where the whole business is headed?
It's the balance between hot and not, right? Like I will admit, I have come in all hot and ready to be like, who wants to be my friend? I'm gonna overload you with all of these meetings, all of these different thoughts. I wanna tackle, I wanna take it all down in day one, and by day two, rebuild it, and day three go, oh, this is exactly what I love to do. But it's really not how it actually works in the business world, especially if you are in one of these, maybe Fortune 500 companies, or you're, part of one cog in the overall flow of legal operations and technology innovation. So no, you're not just going to go in on day one and start, adding calendar meetings or trying to fill up your first couple of weeks. I will admit I did that in one of my jobs. It didn't go so well for me. So after learning that wasn't the way to do that, I think I started to lean into this is a marathon, not a sprint, even though more often than not in legal operations and in-house roles, it feels like a sprint even on day one. So shifting from that traditional, I got to meet everybody, I got to take care of
Mm-hmm.
everything on day one, which sometimes are, habits that have been brought on from paralegal or other roles at law firms, right? Because they want that instant
Interesting.
response, they want that hand holding, they want more of that administrative expertise. Shifting it to legal operations, shifting it to a strategy versus subject matter expertise, you're going to lean into your GC. You're going to then ask the GC, who are the people that I need to understand are the important VIP business stakeholders? And from there, then slowly dripping out that you are new, that you're trying to understand where they are, and just really listen a lot. And at some point, depending upon what the business is, that's when you start to see legal operations come in and you're seeing them take the reins and really not just be that trusted right hand of the general counsel, but the other business stakeholders at a leadership level. But it's not done overnight, and it's not done, trying to just go ahead and say, I'm going to take on all of HR, all of finance, all of technology, all of InfoSec, all of privacy. If you do that, you're definitely going to fail right out the gate.
I love hearing about experiences where things might not have gone quite as well in one job as you would have hoped, and then you fixed it in the next one. I try to tease those stories out on this podcast. I can't always do it, so thank you for for sharing that, Tom. I think another piece here is as you become sort of the head of legal ops and start to build a team out under you, there's a management question as well, right? You're not just, trying to understand, okay, how do I find the best person to manage our technology? And I've done that before myself, so I can do some coaching, right? You're actually thinking about sort of how do you manage this whole team? How do you motivate folks? How do you provide them with growth opportunities? Tommie, talk us through maybe how you've picked up some of those management skills over time and cultivated yourself as a manager.
I cannot overstate enough the value of coaches, mentorships, community, colleagues. Like, there can be colleagues that you admire and aspire to be. They're not on your team. There's a woman at Cedar who gives the most amazing presentations at all hands. I go bananas when she's up there. She's, I believe, on our product team, and I'm just like in awe of what she does. And in our all hands recently, I'm going wild, like, giving her flowers. And I'm like, please hold a class on giving presentations because you're so great. You integrate storytelling so beautifully. And so what I'm saying is, go find the people that you aspire to around the business, around your community, wherever they are. But throughout my life, I've been able to take what I wanted from certain leaders, but also know what to put down and not take from them. Right. So I've myself and others have had folks who their managers were micromanagers, and
Mm-hmm.
the age old question during an interview, like, what type of leader are you? Really early in my career, I would answer it, conversely, and I would say, well, I'm not a micromanager. Like, I know that. Right. And then,
Interesting. Yeah.
like, because I didn't sort of, it was early and I was still learning like what kind of leader I was. And then later I learned I was more of a servant leader. Like, I was more of allowing someone to be the person who is running the show, and they're coming to me and we're collaborating. And now it's more of like a real collaboration, right? It's really,
Mm-hmm.
I want to find the folks that are far, far, far more talented and smarter than me to be on my team. Like, I don't actually even want the show to be about me. I want it to be about, like, whose career grew under me into, an explosion of
Mm-hmm.
flowers and ambition. Like, I want to find those folks. There's no ego in it. It's all about, like, us lifting each other. And so I would certainly say that I'm looking for the talent, looking for people that have that ambition. But even as I just mentioned, with finding a contract manager or a paralegal and someone who is not interested in growing that way, that's okay too. Like, what are you interested in? So even in my own reviews, I've now come to a place in my career where I'm comfortable enough, but this is really hard and uncomfortable when you're early in your career. But now I'm at a place where it's like, we're also talking about what I want to do in my career and where does that look like in 5-10 years, and what do I do today that gets me in that roadmap. So some of it is knowing where you want to go and what you want to do. It's managing your manager because you're managing your career. And so I really try, especially with those folks that are new or who are, a couple years into their career, like, be thinking 5-10 years down the road. Where do you want to go? What do I do with you here today that gets
Mm-hmm.
you there, that puts you in the right direction of going where you want to go? Forcing someone to look introspectively, forcing them to want to, take control of their own roadmap. But really, it's collaboration, and it is definitely about me not being the smartest person in the room. Like, I want to stand back, stand down, and give people the opportunities. Some will be great, they'll hit it out of the park. Some will be a stretch, and that's great too.
Mm-hmm.
Some will all fail together. But letting people be comfy and confident enough to know that the failures are safe. We're all doing this. We're all figuring some of it out. Sort of checking the ego. That is really what I hope folks who have been with me and under me have learned and have seen. And that's the example that I want. And I've learned it from coaches, from mentors, from friends, people in the community. It's really all about us just growing together.
Quick announcement before I let you get back to the episode. SpotDraft just released our annual compensation report for in-house legal professionals. If you're wondering how your compensation compares to your peers across industries, years of experience, and more, Make sure to check it out. Find it at salary-report.spotdraft.com or head to the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the episode. A follow-up for you there, and I also really want to hear Tom's thoughts on this too, which is as you take on a head of legal ops role, the ability to build out and manage a team is super important. But another observation would be the ability to manage up to your GC is just as important. How do you develop the right relationship, a trusting relationship with your GC? Tommie, yeah, I want you to take this first, and then I really want to hear Tom's views here too.
Absolutely. I think the answer is in the same way that you develop most relationships. It's about being honest, it's about being vulnerable. That is a really uncomfortable place for folks, right? Like, that's a really uncomfortable place for folks to really be honest and vulnerable, say, I don't know what I don't know. I'm going to go figure this out. Seeing if the vulnerability goes both ways. I've learned to have a bit of a keen eye during interviews. And so some of it can be not even getting into a role where that relationship's not going to hit. Like
Yeah.
it is a relationship at the end of the day, right? Like, and so you can figure out, hopefully you can start to figure out, like, are we vibing together? Are we able to communicate? Can we start to figure out how to anticipate each other's needs? That's really hard to do in an interview, right? When you have 30 minutes, it's really hard to do. You're trying to do it with the people who might be your colleagues, but you can start to plant the seeds there. And I've been able to pretty successfully figure out by looking at it like it is a relationship. It is going to be built on trust. It is going to be built on a shared vision and understanding, like, are we moving in the same direction or are we not? And all of that is communication. It's like trying to get at the heart of what we're trying to achieve here. What do we want this team to look like? What do we want our wins to look like? Like, who are we as a team? And a lot of the kumbaya stuff that goes into doing on sites and getting to know each other better. But again, as Tom said before, we're people. People are at the center of all of this, right? Like, we're at the center of the universe. We're working hard alongside these people. So it's about building the relationships with people. You can figure out who you're going to vibe with and not. When I was interviewing at Cedar, Vanessa and I, who was a guest right here on this podcast, she and I talked for several weeks. We would talk on the phone. We would talk about the office. We would talk about culture. We were vetting each other from a personal perspective. Like, can I work alongside with this person? Like, can we vibe, basically? Like, I know it's so
Yeah.
silly. Like, can we vibe with each other? And I really, after the phone calls and talking and through the negotiation about the role, like, I really began to realize, like, this is a person who I can work with, who I can be in the trenches with, who I can talk to, who I can tell I succeeded or failed, or what success, build out what success and failure looks like together. So at the end of the day, it's as hard and as simple as it is a relationship, and vet it like it is one. And do you want to win alongside this person? Are they going to have your back? Are they going to speak highly of you in rooms you are not in? Like, is this your person? And then go out and find them.
I think that's, and then Tom, I really want to hear your view here too. I think that's so underestimated though. After I took the job at Spot Draft, and even still, people will ask me, what are you doing? Why do you like it? And one of the things that I would say, among like, 3 or 4 others was I really liked Shashank, and right, having a CEO who I admired, wanted to work with, thought that I could learn from, was going to have a very honest relationship with, was very important to me. And I think sometimes people look at you and like, yeah, but like, why would that be the thing that convinced you to work there, as opposed to, what's the scope of the role? What's the salary?
Yeah.
What's the promotion schedule going to look like? And to me, it was more about picking the person, like almost like picking the right horse to bet on, right? More than anything else. Like, if I work with him, good things will happen.
Cannot be understated.
Right, exactly. So I think that, you've hit on something that people really underestimate as a part of the interview process. If they view taking the job often as something that's very transactional, they might focus on other things as opposed to who they're going to be working with.
This is exactly how it is. Well, you both are giving your little flowers out and loves, right, to those that you work for. It truly was the exact same journey for me. Now, I will say that along this journey, right, I think one of my strongest skill sets and that allows me to be both authentically Tom and vulnerable while holding the power of leadership has always been rooted in this people centric segment, right, within your
Hmm.
career. And this can be through mentorship opportunities, through learning to get up when you fall down, right? A lot of these like different skill sets that you learn over time, the disappointments, the highs, the lows, right? The getting passed over for promotions and then understanding
Yeah.
what you need, right, to actually make that go the second time. And it really sticks out to me that yeah, when I in my current role at Legal IO here, it's yeah, I understood who Peter was. I knew what Legal IO did, right? I used them. I was, one of their largest clients when I was at Credit Karma. And it was because I loved the way that ALSPs and those models, right, allowed you to
Hmm.
shift from outside counsel spend, right, to human resources. And that was just something I really thought is needed a little bit more as we're trying to get over the doing more with less mentality that is so gross right now, for the in-house teams. And it was finally when I had met with Peter and he was just encouraging me to really kind of talk about what I have done over time. And so as I was getting ready for these interviews and I was like, all right, let me go ahead and tell him my story, right? I remembered something that a mentor had told me, which is that, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And this understanding who you are, your branding, your work relationship, your love language, right? All of those is not about just talking about yourself, right? It's about making sure other people know who you want to be and who you are. And I think that's when I kind of took these times to make some changes in my life and remembered that that center of excellence, there's always something that's been in the community for me. And so I worked really, really hard over the last few years. And some of the days were really long, right? But I was finding
Hmm.
my purpose and my drive, and it was an insatiable thirst to learn. And that's really kind of what allowed me to get into this wonderful role that I'm now in at Legal IO.
I don't want to make you say the same thing again, Tom, but I do have a question here about the working relationship with the GC. And I suppose it's not that different than the working relationship with any other executive. But to what extent are you taking cues from them on the broader strategy versus you helping them set that? Because you have subject matter expertise in a lot of areas where even though you're in legal, frankly, like a lot of general counsels probably they're not going to know that much about e-discovery unless they have like maybe like a super deep litigation background or if they came out of the VC world or right VC corporate world. So to what extent are you sort of taking cues from them versus figuring out the right way to tell them, hey, these are actually the processes and programs that we need to invest in and build out?
It's the one thing I have focused the most on in the last number of years, and it has served me well, right? Whether it is reporting directly to a GC, whether reporting now directly to a CEO, one day, being in charge of hiring the first GC at our company, right? Since I handle all of our legal currently right now, it's about understanding that, we've said for decades, right, that attorneys should focus more on legal work and making sure they use their law school degrees and all the things that they, really went to have that awesome delivery of legal services. But the pathway for legal operations has opened up the door to be that trusted business partner. And when you're showing those data driven approaches and leaning into the experiences from your non-traditional pathways, that's when you have the opportunity to really shine in front of your GC. So for me, it was okay, maybe I don't need to then focus on hiring somebody, right, to show the value of having billing guidelines that save money, right? But what I do
Mm-hmm.
need to do is I need to show how legal is moving past being a cost center and a true business partner that creates value. And that was the love language, right, of the GC because they're at that strategic level. And so when I think of the relationships that you build with GCs, CLOs, executives at any company in house or as an ALSP legal vendor, it really does come down to how can you understand what they need, and then how
Mm-hmm.
can you understand what your expertise is, and then like a cute little Venn diagram, where's that center of excellence, right? Where is that place that you can understand that focusing on your skill sets and your strengths and creating a space where you can thrive means listening, means understanding the business, and ultimately leaning into each other during those periods of vulnerability. As you said earlier, they may not know e-discovery, right? They may not know about specifically how the accrual process works. They may not want to be
Yeah.
bothered, right, with CLM implementations and mapping data sets, right? But what they do want to understand is, how is this journey going along for you? How is it ultimately going to create trust within the legal team? How can we be the front door that says yes? And when you start to work together using those different skill sets, that's when the magic really does happen.
And that's truly how I came to become a part of a legal operations team originally, was being so close to the business, knowing what all their frustrations and pain points were with a legal team. It was truly like a department of like we literally were the back office. Like on the floor there was a back office and that was legal team, and it was there was no integration, there was no collaboration. It just was like, I will drop this contract into this black hole and maybe someday it will come back again one day. Who knows? We'll see, right? Let's put our numbers on red. And like, so it was bringing it all together, but it was because I was so close to the business. I was so steeped in
Mhm.
what they were doing. I was going to their meetings and I'm coming back to my GC going, here's what the strategy is. Here's what they are doing. Here's what they're hoping to achieve. Here are what their objectives are. That brought us closer together. And now I work for organizations where a lot of the executive teams really realize how integral a CLO or a GC is. So they're there, they're building out the strategy for the business. And then, having been a part of strategies and having been, a bridge builder between the two different worlds, if you will, it's sitting there and going, okay, how do I sit with my CLO or GC? How do I execute on what the business strategy is? How do I ensure that the legal expertise is really supporting what the bigger visions are? But you can be that strategic leader and you can have the seat at the table because of how steeped you are inside of what the business is doing. And that's the opportunity. Like, that is the opportunity to holistically impact your business.
Okay, seat at the table. That's an important phrase. And I
Yep.
think you have an opinion on this, Tommie, or your opinion may depend on sort of the business, but how important is it for you to be on your GC's leadership team as the head of legal ops?
I think it's very important. And so I appreciate that that may not always be an opportunity. And so I certainly don't want anyone to feel like, oh, I'm not winning if I don't have a seat at that table. But if
Yeah.
you can advocate for it and if you can get the seat at that table on the leadership team of the office of the GC, of the CLO office, I think a lot of CLOs and GCs are trending towards actually putting their legal operations person like at the table, because they realize when they're sitting in their leadership team meetings with all the leaders from all the practice areas, having the centralized person who can help to execute on what each of their different plans are, removing all the friction points for each of those different practice areas, that's the win, right? Like, so they're
Hmm.
realizing and they're giving you that seat at the table. And I think if you are going to be in the role where you are that strategic person, where you're sort of acting like a chief of staff, like that person has to have a seat at the table. Otherwise, not only are they going to have a really hard time getting their work done, getting buy-in from other leaders, but let's face it, politically there is the setting the tone of what you want the vision of your department to be,
Yep.
and having someone who's going out and attempting to execute on that, when they see that the leaders of that team have bought into that, everyone else in the department is going to go, I'm going to
Yep.
help this person, I'm going to take their meetings, I'm going to work towards a shared vision. If it's questionable or opaque, or people are like, do I really want to do this? Is this really is this really a strategy payoff? Like, they may not be so bought in. So it is a signal. It's a signal
Mhm.
that no, this is what we are doing. And I have an expectation as a leader. I have an expectation as a leadership team. And when you're getting the buy-in from that team, everyone's coming together and they're collaborating. So can you do your job without it? Yes. And I don't want anyone
Mhm.
to feel like, oh, I'm not going to be a success because I don't have a seat at that table. You can, you will advocate for it, do what you have to do. But when you get the seat at the table, people start to really see what is happening. There's not several layers of translation of what you're doing. It's I'm here, I'm presenting to you, I'm showing you the wins, I'm showing you the impact
Hmm.
I'm having. And it is such a shortcut that helps your career and helps the team that I think it is very, very, very important to advocate for and to have.
And it might create the environment or the opportunities that allow you to think about what's next, give you the exposure to think about what's next. Uh, Tom, you've gone on to not only do legal ops, but also lead community for legal.io. Tell us about how that came about. Was that something that was part of your plan? Did it just happen organically because of all the relationships you had in the industry? Tell us about how you managed to take on something that frankly is more on the business side as opposed to the legal side.
I think the answer is yes, yes, and yes, right? My natural instinct, right? The one that I want to say out loud was no, it wasn't part of the plan. But then as I'm looking back, as I am thinking about my journey, it may not have been the plan, but it absolutely was the highway I was always going down, whether or not I
Mm-hmm.
knew it was a marked or unmarked road, right? And for me, how it came about was I was at a point in my career, and Tommie was a very, very close confidant during this time. And much like the community, right, is we lean into what are your struggles? What are you seeing? Have you been in this before? And I had a lot of people that said, Akshay being included, right, of, hey,
Mm-hmm.
how do you ultimately level up your career when you know that you are doing the things you need to do, you are hitting your metrics, but you are still hungry, you want to grow for more. And we are seeing a lot of this in the legal ops and the legal tech
Mm-hmm.
community right now. It's these individuals who are transitioning from different segments, but ultimately still doing legal ops or legal technology as a core function, but still helping with growing the business in whatever needs legal or business can actually move it forward. And so, the one piece of advice I really want everyone to hear is when you're determining where you are at in your career, make sure that you understand your business acumen and professional emotional intelligence, because that is ultimately the key to success. It's about building these connections and making a real impact. And I found that I was at a space in my career where I wanted to actually create more space. And looking back, right, I went from receptionist to paralegal to head of legal ops and a de facto chief of staff role. And now my title of vice president of community and legal operations at Legal.io, it really is this amalgamation, right? When I needed to listen to myself and not just say it out loud, but lean into my own professional network, that there are multiple paths to success. And when I realized I was data driven, right, math and science
Mm-hmm.
brained, I started to get the creativity through the podcast. It helped with my leadership skills and my speaking skills. All of
Mm-hmm.
those, when I mixed it up into a bowl, I actually reached out to Legal.io and I said, I think I'm ready for a new career. Can you help me, let me know about jobs, keep me on, your short list of
Mm-hmm.
things. These are something that, I'm interested in doing. And much like life isn't really following a set script, they 100% just flipped it around and turned it into something different. And I was a little bit imposter syndrome, right? I was thinking, oh my gosh, can I leave a Fortune 500 company where I have a team under me and, I'm at these leadership meetings and I'm doing things in my career that's much more on the chief of staff role, and then flip that script into a startup environment in which I am heading up legal and legal operations while doing community, while at the same time, as as both of you know, being both for, early, staged companies, right, who are also in their own, journey. Yeah, how are you doing it all, right? Sometimes you need to be pulled into both getting that MSA and doing the accruals and being able to attend a dinner while like hosting somebody on a podcast, right? And it's where you find that advocacy, that passion, and that's where I ultimately found, my own voice in my route. And I do hope that, for anyone that's listening, that they do take those opportunities that are given to them in their career, because if they are able to step outside of what they think a traditional path looks like and understand who
Mm-hmm.
they are and where their passion is and where they create value, then I don't think that there's ever a career path that ends for people. You just transition that and think differently to be able to gain new skill sets.
Tommie, Tom referenced some of this. I think there's a big conversation happening in legal ops right now about how transitioning to a chief of staff to a GC or CLO role, or even to something that's more of a general operations role like COO, sort of like how our COO at Spot Draft came from running legal ops at Coinbase, and before that at what was Facebook, now Meta. What's your view on that trend? Is that also something that you might want to do someday?
I'm going to answer you, but I'm also going to say when Tom was talking about having a dinner and doing a podcast and doing accruals and doing an MSA, my mind made like an AI photo of all those things happening at
Oh.
the same time, where he's at a dinner, he's got a mic in his hand, one hand's doing accruals, one's doing the MSA, just doing it all over there. So
Is an
this is
octopus your spirit
right.
animal,
Yes,
Tom?
yes, yes. I have 8 tentacles, and they're just trying to figure out where to go.
Who's your So I think this is what is so incredible about legal operations. And this is why I said earlier, like, if you're a paralegal or contract manager, you have to dig into what your ambition is and what you want to go. I remember so clearly, it's so like a crystal memory in my head when I was a paralegal, and I was a paralegal at a record company, and it couldn't be more fun. And the guy who was like my work bestie, who I worked literally sat right next to him day after day. He's now the GC for huge. Like, I remember he was applying to law school, and I was thinking to myself, like, I am just never gonna wake up one day and be an attorney. I'm also never gonna wake up one day and want to be an attorney. So what do I do? And it was such a conundrum because I'm not gonna date myself, but it was 100 years ago. And being that it was so long ago, there wasn't a legal operations role. And in fact, when I got the call from HBO to come be a contract manager, that was the first time my mind had ever realized, like, oh, that's the leap. And that's how early
Mhm.
in that inception, like, that even contract managers were coming into their own, right? And again, it was like 100 years ago. So it was this really hard struggle I had, which was, what do I do? Like, what do I do with my career? Because I don't want to go to law school, frankly. And I struggled through it a little, but like through it, right? Like, I went through it and I started to more lean into what do I like and what gets me jazzed and what's interesting and how do I sort of deliver my work with integrity, and in kind of always being honest with myself and looking at the things that I like and matching what I was really good at with things that I really enjoyed.
Mhm.
There came the evolution and sort of the revolution. And now I find myself inside of a function, a place, like a job that I love. But also now that all of these really cool and smart and ambitious legal ops people have started to set the blaze literally on fire, like they have trailblazed it. And you just mentioned Akshay. So now we have someone who was in strategic legal operations role who
Mhm.
realized, and there were many that came before him, and I don't want to sort of forget about them. Like even Tom on the community side, Mary came
Mhm.
first. Like, there's so many people who blazed the trail, but it was it was setting the stage for there being, operational ways that we work that translate far outside and far broader than what we're doing here just inside of the legal department. If you can run your legal department like a business, which is a big Connie saying, like you run
Yeah.
it like a business, guess what? That application goes wider. It goes to running a business like a business, right? Like, you're
Mhm.
managing finances, you're managing all the cross-functional teams that you work with. You're managing how, contracting, which is probably like 80% of any, good business, whether it's sales, whether it's doing M&A, like whatever you're
Mhm.
doing, you're putting some legalese around it. So you're taking all these transferable skills. So I would say if you asked me this question 3 years ago, I would go, "Oh, the evolution naturally is into a chief of staff role." Like, it's being
Yeah.
the right hand to the person who's at the helm, and that's as far as we get. And then all of a sudden, everything shakes up, and it's like, that's not actually as far as we get. Whoa, someone
Yep.
blew the ceiling off of this. A couple of someones blew the ceiling off of this. wow, now we go even wider. Now we can actually, and I promise you, I'm not joking, in a review I just had with my boss, when, as I just said, like that's a part of, my talking points in reviews, which is where do I see myself? Where do I want to go? It's making sure we're both aligned on what my career is. We're both aligned on what, she wants for the business, for the team. Like,
Mhm.
what is my contribution there? But also, what's her contribution back to mentoring me into what my bigger objectives are? It was, hey, I can certainly transfer these, operational skills bigger, wider. What do
Mhm.
they look like? What do they look like inside of this organization? What do they look like on the big stage? And so, really thinking about the reality that we could take these operational skills and bring them properly to a business. That might be the ceiling someone's breaking through in 5 years, right? But that's the one that I think we're starting to see play out now, which is incredible. And it really speaks to what strategic leaders we are in legal ops.
Well, as we start to wrap up, we're actually not done because we're going to continue the conversation at CLOC, where I am super excited to see both of you very soon. And I wanted to give each of you a chance to sort of talk about your panel that you're doing at CLOC and also where people can find you. Because I'm sure after this episode, a bunch of folks are going to be thinking, how can I go and like share half a coffee with Tom or Tommie at CLOC? You're going to be mobbed.
We only Tom, we'll take our coffees together, right? Like we'll
Yes.
we'll we'll do
We're a
coffee.
package
You
duo.
and I drink
So
out of the same coffee and someone else can have that drink.
yeah, so let me go first. So I'm really excited. I'm moderating a panel with Janine Dixon from Meta and Angela
Yeah.
Mendenhall from Zoom. It is on Wednesday, May 8th from 11:40 to 12:10 p.m. And the session is titled Building Bridges, Personal Branding for Career Progression. And in true dad joke form, right? I'm going to be interviewing both of them kind of TED Talk style on the stage, and we're going to be talking about this notion of how do you build your career much like you are building a bridge, right? And kind of as though what Tommie and I talked about earlier today, right? As we're thinking about our professional paths, if you make them truly yours, it's this mix of your identity, your past experiences, your skills, but then also there's that personal branding side. And so we're really
Mhm.
going to dive into the session talking about how do you build this professional and personal brand, right? How can it reflect the real you and show what you can bring the table? But now here's where they come, right? But it's going to actually talk about bridging the gap, right, between uncertainties and those big opportunities that are waiting on the other side of the bridge. And as we continue to think of our careers as walking across the bridge step by step, we also have to remember the foundation of how a bridge is built, right? And it doesn't just come from, the materials or the vision or the purpose, right? But it's really the hard work of the people that ultimately and collectively get that bridge built up and make sure that its structure is solid to like let a boat run into it, but solid enough that like it happens, right? So we're really going to be talking about and hearing stories both from Janine and Angela, how they have shaped their own brand, how they've been the masterminds behind the design and the bridge itself. And then really how we've all three of us over time in this wild world of legal operations, legal technology, and chief of staff, right, have been able to link our goals not just to the person that we're becoming, but quite frankly, the type of career that we want to build and inspire others to follow along as we continue to open more doors. So really, really excited for this awesome session. Yeah. And then if anyone wants to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tom Stephenson, VP of Community and Legal Operations at Legal.io. And you'll be seeing my flashy blazers, my sparkly shoes, and anything else, probably hanging on the side of Tommie for most of the conference.
He's going to be attached to me. So this wonderful audience at the Abstract can reach me at linkedin.com/Tommie. And oh boy, where to begin with CGI 2024. So I'm super proud to be doing the Foundations of Legal Ops 101 workshop. It's a half a day. It's the Monday before the conference begins. And I love ushering in this new class of legal operations professional. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm so happy to be doing the 101. And the next day there's a networking breakfast with some folks that are new to legal operations, and it'll be their first time going to CGI. So excited to be at that. Then I'm doing a solutions lab with Walters Clore about legal ticketing.
Mhm.
And my panel with the beloved Adam Becker of Cockroach Labs, and he's also sitting on the board of CLOC, Tareen Collins from Panasonic, Lori David Henrik. I cannot wait for our panel, which is called The Invisible Woman Was Wrong. Visibility is your superpower, which is all about utilizing your wins and your brand and all that you're doing in your day job to, bring success to your role. It's about sort of leveling up the way that you perform and the way that you can sort of harness the power of your performance to level up your career. I think it's going to be a great chat. And last, but certainly not least, doing the solution lab with Spot Draft alongside Brenda Perez, Akshay Doshi, and of course, Akshay from Spot Draft, which I am just so thrilled about doing. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yes, and we are very excited also that this was sort of assigned to us, but that we happen to be the sponsor of both of your panels as well.
Yes.
So
Love how that once again, this is just all the good juju you're throwing out into the world
How
that's
did that
coming back
happen?
and blessing us.
CLOC CLOC knew. They said, "Hey, you've got friends on these panels."
I was super proud to see that we had the Spot Draft logo. It's great. It's great because we love chatting with you. We love talking with all of you. So this is wonderful.
Well, Tom and Tommie, thank you so much for joining this episode of The Abstract and creating this with me. This was a lot of fun.
We had a great time. What do you think, Tom?
Oh, so great. Cannot wait to do this again in a couple weeks in person. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And see you at CLOC. And to all of our listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope to see you at CLOC as well. And if you liked this one, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So leave a rating or a comment. If you'd like to reach out to us, our LinkedIn profiles are in the description. See you all next week.